What a program we have for you today on this Monday. The big news over the weekend coming out of Ferguson, Missouri, in the case of the killing of an unarmed African-American teenager named Michael Brown at the hands of a police officer. We now have the name of that police officer. Police have determined that it is Darren Wilson, Officer Darren Wilson, who has been a member of the police force for 6 years without any kind of disciplinary actions against him. The officer who shot and killed the 18-year-old was announced by police and will be what was already clearly under some kind of protective plan. Of course, the concern from police, the reason why they didn't release the name sooner, according to police, was related to the number of death threats that they had received. Jackson, the police chief, Tom Jackson, said there had been a report of a robbery in the area just before Officer Wilson encountered Michael Brown walking down the street near an apartment complex. He said this during a press conference late last week. And the second I saw that, ladies and gentlemen, what went through my mind was the mention of this unrelated robbery strikes me as an attempt to begin a context of exculpation. And we can kind of see it, yes, ultimately, in the same way that while there had been some break-ins in George Zimmerman's neighborhood, Trayvon Martin was not specifically connected to any of them. It was used to set the tone for why George Zimmerman may have been suspicious of Trayvon Martin. I'm already feeling the same thing, ladies and gentlemen, where this unrelated robbery that happened in the area may have played a factor, may have been an important point in why Officer Darren Wilson opted to shoot, and according to 3 eyewitnesses, more than once at Michael Brown, instead of investigate in a different way. The deadly interaction was supposedly very, very quick. Jackson said that Wilson encountered Brown at 12:01 p.m. and had shot him by 12:04 p.m. Authorities have said that Wilson has been placed on administrative leave after the shooting. And there was significant pressure from the ACLU as well as some other organizations suing for the police reports. And of course, if those police reports were to be released, they would contain the name of the officer, and thus the police choosing to get out in front of that and release the name of the officer. The racial component continues to be a factor. The protests are, of course, separate from the issue of the shooting, right? The protests themselves are really showing some of the racial tensions that are going on, particularly when you look at a group of protesters that contains many non-whites, and you look at a police department that has 50 of 53 police officers being white in a town where 21,000 people are black. Now, as the story remains, and this has been the case all along, the story from the police differs drastically from the story of the 3 witnesses. The 3 witnesses saying that there was never a moment in which Michael Brown, the victim, entered the police officer's car or tried to enter. If anything, it's possible that the police officer tried to pull him in, and Michael Brown was able to not go in there. Police saying that Michael Brown entered the car and was assaulting the police officer. Also, the 3 eyewitness reports say that there were multiple shots even after Michael Brown put his hands up, reportedly. Multiple shots fired upon Michael Brown, and we are still waiting for the final coroner medical examiner report to tell us as far as that goes. I want to be very clear here. With regard to Officer Darren Wilson, there is nothing at all to be gained by jumping the gun and issuing more death threats or trying to find this officer and issue physical violence towards him, right? I understand your skepticism about the justice system. I understand. We've talked about these stories so many times, so I get it. But there is no potential positive outcome from now, before the investigation is complete, before a potential trial, if there is to be one, before any of this stuff. Right now, physical violence towards the officer will serve no purpose than maybe the immediate satisfaction of some visceral desire, which I sympathize with, but I insist that we must wait for justice to at least let justice be attempted here, and then we can talk further.